headlines across the country, and also to have a conversation that is going to set the agenda of the nation. Now, this is the thing. This nation has been marred by protests ever since the 25th of June, that is last month, and it started way earlier, before the 25th of June actually, where protesters made their way to the National Assembly. We are in the process of trying to heal a nation. How do we go about that? Where do we start? The head of state's rhetorics in the past few days don't seem to be doing justice when it comes to charting a new path for this particular nation and getting to heal it. We have a generation that is eager to continue pushing the government to the edge. How do we heal this particular nation? What is the right process? That is the conversation we'll be having here on New Dawn, and I'll be speaking to Wilson Sosion and also Gloria Oroba and Nurdin Kagai to have that conversation and try make sense of the events that have been happening across the week. And also, this is the thing, one more thing that is actually making, when it comes to making news across the country, is the issue to do with cabinet vetting. We'll also be getting into that and also taking a look at the dailies and what you're waking up to as far as news is concerned. Start engaging us on our socials. Satamoy Brand, that is on X at K24 TV. We are also live on Facebook and on YouTube, and we will welcome your feedback on those particular social platforms. We'll be sampling some of it as we continue with the program this particular morning. Tell us where you are waking up from, especially here in the country, and also what you think about the conversation that we'll be having later on in the studio. How do we get to heal the nation and moving forward from the protests that have rocked the country in the past few weeks? But first, we want to take a look at the news-making headlines in the country. Now, let us bring you up to date with some of the developing stories. Now, Paul Body IEBC is on the spot over how it used over 4 billion Kenya shillings to settle legal fees during the 2022 general elections. Now, while appearing before the Public Accounts Committee, IEBC CEO Hussein Marjan had difficulties explaining how at some point one legal firm received 1.9 billion Kenya shillings in a fee note that was presented to the body. Now, this even as stakeholders made submissions on the election servers being open to the public, saying trust deficit cannot be quenched through legislation but fixing system issues. Joel Chacha reports.
Maybe that's something we need to get first from the Commission.
The National Assembly Public Accounts Committee has put on the spot the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission IEBC on audit queries following payment of 4 billion Kenya shillings as legal fees in the 2022 general election.
I'm being asked to release money to pay those billions in terms of legal fees. I'll grow cold feet. One advocate who is appearing 278 to 282, those are five cases, 85 million. Again, Chair, when you look at all those numbers I've given you, you will find like 15, 16 legal firms. They can basically stay in their law firms and only make a living for a whole year on IEBC.
You only pick 4 and they support one another and you finish the case. Why do you have to call the whole Nairobi lawyers, law firms, on one case?
IEBC CEO Hussein Marjan found it difficult to explain how a single law firm gobbled up 1.9 billion Kenya shillings following a fee note it raised.
Chair, I need to understand whether it is a question of competence or a question of capacity that makes us to incur such a huge losses of money.
We are considering the flip side of this case. If the Commission were to lose the presidential election petition, this country would go into a fresh election and the cost would be 12 billion.
Legal stated this is a presidential petition, and if we did not have good strategy, we will not have won this petition. I'm not a legal person, but I would rely heavily on the advice of the legal directory. And by the way, for all the cases that are outside of the caps, they are always negotiated.
Meanwhile, the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee of the Senate received submissions On the Elections Amendment Bill number 2 of 2024.
We must open this electronic audit of elections for anybody to scrutinize, so that then it becomes easy and it settles the question of a cantankerous presidential election period. Voting should be simple, accurate, verifiable, secure, accountable, and transparent. Not counting. And I think that's why you get it wrong. We always think that what should be verified is counting and the results. If you don't get the voting right, then all those things you are verifying are on a false premise. And this is why we will never meet the constitutional values and principles in our elections.
The committee was referred to mistakes of past elections that could be resolved without introduction of foreign policies in handling elections.
Elections should not be complicated, really. There are many other issues. And I'm just wondering, just thinking aloud, seriously, we have these 3 years. The experts, I mean, COG, JLAC, IBC and the rest, can't we come together and look at what life can be? How easy can elections be in Kenya?
In other countries, candidates don't even go, presidential candidates or other candidates don't even go to a tally center where the presidential results are. They watch it from either their party headquarters, so as to avoid a conflict of the kind we saw last year, which can get very ugly and cause anarchy in the country.
Our submission as FIDA is that we cannot really divorce ourselves from the question of trust. Trust at many levels, as has been submitted. Elections are not complicated.
From an analog point of view, the major question about elections is trust. And there's a fear that we may over-legislate our elections because of trying to address basically a software issue. So rather than casting aspersions on IEBC, on whoever, Parliament, because there's a deficit of trust nearly in all the institutions, not just one, I think we need to use this moment and this opportunity to be able to put our house together in terms of election processes in the country.
Joel Chacha, K24 TV, Nairobi.
Now, President William Ruto has continued his push for national unity while calling on ODM and UDA leaders to put their political differences aside and work together. Now, the head of state has further defended his broad-based government approach, which he maintains its end goal is to foster the country's development agenda. Bentura Komboka with the details of that report.
President William Ruto has concluded his 4-day tour of the coastal region while amplifying calls for national unity and accountability. Speaking today in Mombasa and Tana River counties, the head of state has defended his decision on reconstituting his cabinet, comprising of leaders from the opposition, saying the move was aimed at fostering development and national cohesion.
Ndugu yangu mdogo Mohamed Ali, na waomba viongozi wa pande zote, upande wetu wa UDA, upande wa ODM, na waomba sasa tuwache ubabe chini, tuungane, tuweze kupeleka Mombasa, Pwani na Kenya mbele. Na mimi nikisema hivyo, mimi sitaki kukatisha mambo ya kiongozi yeyote. Nyinyi wananchi ndio mafundi. Si nyinyi ndio mtachagua? Si mnajua kuchagua MCA, mnajua kuchagua mjumbe na gavana na senator, si hata rais nyinyi ndio kusema.
Speaking during the laying of a foundation stone at the Nyali TVET Institute, Ruto has called for a taming of political rivalry between UDA and ODM leaders, with Nyali Member of Parliament Mohamed Ali hitting out former Mombasa Governor Hassan Joho, telling him to focus on his newly nominated position in government.
Tafadhali, hii siasa ya Mombasa local politics utuachie tunyoane vizuri hapa. Na huyo ndugu yetu Joho tutamkaribisha. Na ukimpa bendera, ajue hiyo si bendera ya Mombasa, ni bendera ya Kenya. Kwa hivyo aserve Kenyans, awache ile vituko ya Mombasa County. UDA iko imara. Simunaona juzi si niliambia governor nitampatia wheelbarrow, akachanganyikiwa, akasahau kuita rais. Leo amekimbia wote.
The inclusion of Ali Hassan Joho in the government has caused a stir in the region, with the President William Ruto calling on leaders to put their political differences aside and embrace unity.
Naona hapa kuna kidogo ubabe wa kisiasa. Mimi nawaomba tafadhali ndugu zangu. Nawaomba tuungane, nawaomba tushirikiane, nawaomba tufanye kazi pamoja kwa sababu taifa la Kenya na umoja wa taifa la Kenya ni muhimu.
The president winded his tour in Tenerife County, where he pledged to relocate flood victims and connect 6,000 households, as well as the Galana Kulalu irrigation project in the last mile electricity connection.
Kwa janga la mafuriko ambayo ilitokea hapa Tana River, kama serikali kuna watu zaidi ya 6,000 makao yao iliharibika. Mimi nataka nitangaze nikiwa Tana River, tumewapatia milioni 450 ili kuwajengea manyumba upya wale familia 6,000 ambayo familia zao ama makao yao iliharibika siku ya mafuriko.
Bentura Kumbuka, K24, Nairobi.
Right, sounds familiar, huh? Away from that, it is now official that Raila Odinga will be running for the chairmanship of the African Union Commission in the February 2025 elections in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Now, this announcement follows the formal submission of his candidacy by Foreign Affairs Principal Secretary Dr. Korir Sing'oei. Now, since its inception as OAU in 1963, and its mutation to AUC, no Kenyan has ever served as the Secretary General or Chairperson of the organization. And as Electino Odera now reports, Kenya has high hopes of emerging the first nation within the East African bloc to reign the top leadership of Africa's continent since the introduction of election rule in 2018 that seeks to promote the principle of regional rotation.
Kenya is racing against time in jostling for the AU chairmanship position. This was made evident after Dr. Korir Sing'oei, Principal Secretary for Foreign Affairs, formally submitted the candidature of Raila Odinga for the position. Kenya has tried the position in recent years, but has failed since its formation in 1963. In 2017, former Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary Amina Mohamed tried her stab but didn't make it through. This time, pundits say it could be Kenya's time to lead the African continent, since no Kenyan has ever served as the Secretary General or Chairperson of the organization since its formation. With Odinga prepared for the campaign trail, however, there seems to be stiff competition from Somalia's Fauzia Yusuf Adam and Mohammed Ali Yusuf of Djibouti, the latest entrant. Only one is expected to take the mantle of leadership from Musa Faki Mahamat in the elections slated for 25th of February 2025 in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, during the 38th ordinary session of the Assembly of Heads of State and Government of the Africa Union. In the letter forwarded to AU, Kenya argues that Odinga is the ideal candidate for the position as his Pan-Africanist credentials, his suitability, his vast networks across Africa, and his proven competency to lead AU, Africa's premier continental organization. He has served as Prime Minister and in various ministerial portfolios, and importantly, as the High Representative of the AU Chairperson on Infrastructure. He has also served several elections in Africa and has served as a peace mediator in several countries, read part of the statement. Kenya also argues that it is only Odinga who can best optimize resources endowed by Africa for the benefit of all. Kenya also believes that Odinga's leadership is visionary, transformational, action-oriented, and will accelerate the implementation of the aspirations, goals, and flagship programs of Agenda 2063, and that he has formulated priorities and strategies to address the most pressing challenges facing the continent, including African integration and infrastructure development, economic transformation, enhancing intra-African trade, financial independence, gender equity and equality, agricultural transformation, climate action, peace and security, and a young empowerment agenda for Africa. As Kenya seeks to bolster her efforts to sit at the helm of AU's leadership for the first time, it has maintained its bragging rights of being a member in good standing within the AU and consistently meets its obligations to the Union, and that since the introduction of the election rule in 2018, that leadership should be based on the principle of regional balance, giving it confidence to automatically lead the East African region for the position. Electin Odera, K24 TV.
Now, UDA Secretary General, that is Cleophas Malala, and Trans Nzoia Governor George Natembeya have called on the ODM party to clarify their stance on the nomination of ODM leaders into President William Ruto's government. Now, speaking in Kakamega during a Mulembe People's Assembly, the leaders criticized ODM party for distancing itself from the appointments. The remarks came as elected leaders from the region gave the meeting a wide berth, despite indicating that they were going to chart a new political path for the Mulembe community at the meeting. Timothy Simwa reports.
The inaugural Mulembe People's Assembly went down at the Kakamega Golf Club today, despite falling short of its last week's bidding. None of the elected legislators from the region attended the meeting, save for Trans Nzoia Governor George Natembeya, UDA Secretary General Cleophas Malala, and former Cabinet Secretary Rashid Echesa. Natembeya and Malala jointly took a swipe at the Orange Democratic Movement Party for denying any involvement of their members being appointed into President William Ruto's cabinet. Malala further took issue with the ODM's demands for dialogue, saying they're in no position to give conditions to the government.
Hiyo siasa ya uongo na utapeli nafaa tumalize. Sababu kama umeweka officials wako wote kwa serikali, you cannot be in government and in opposition at the same time. You must choose one place. Na hii mambo ya kusema kwamba ati mnaweka barua ati dialogue, tufanye dialogue. Kwani wale watu wakiappointiwa wakina Oparanya, hamukufanya dialogue ndio wakaappointiwa?
Governor Natembeya, has been leading a campaign dubbed Tawe to challenge the status quo in Mulembe politics, says time is now for the vote-rich community to chart a new political path.
Mahali tumefikia tunasema nini? Mambo ya kupigia watu kura. Wanaenda kugawana vitu huko. Wanatusahau wakati ya kukula nyama, wakati ya kuwinda tunawinda pamoja. Wakati ya kukula wanakula peke yao. Tumesema nini? Tumekataa. Na sisi tumesema kwamba ile meza tutakaribishwa. Tukitumia namba zetu kama jamii, tutaenda kwa ile meza bila kukaribishwa.
The first time governor reckons that Luyas have nothing to write home about their huge numbers.
The politics is about numbers. Sisi kama jamii tumetumia namba zetu namna gani? Ili tuwache kuomba vile tunaomba sema kwamba tumepewa nini. Kwa sasa nitakana kuwa nafasi ya Mluya aende hapo na kisu ya kugawa hii nyama tunapata namna gani. Kama tungekuwa tumejipanga vizuri with our numbers. Watu wetu. Imekuwaje? Jamii namba 2. Hata urais peke yake hatuwezi kunusa. Jamii namba 5 imetupita. Jamii namba 2 tumekuwa watu wa kukula kwa macho.
Former Cabinet Secretary Rashid Echesa, on his part, challenged Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi and Speaker Moses Wetangula to enumerate to the community what they have delivered for the Mulembe nation in government.
Tumekuja hapa tuongee kama watoto wa mtu mmoja. Ndio ikifika 2027 tuwe tunaweza keti kwa ile meza tukiangaliana macho kwa macho tukiwa na heshima.
And just like previous efforts, the move to consolidate the Mulembe nation votes is already facing headwinds after Kakamega Deputy Governor Ayub Savula described the meeting as disruptive and whose agenda is to undermine Musalia, Wetangula and Wycliffe Oparanya. Timothy Simwa, K24 TV.
There's a tag there about elusive Luya unity, and I don't think some of these leaders do justice to that particular community when it comes to uniting that. But at the same time, do we really need to speak in one voice, or divergent of opinion is actually something good for a growing democracy? Away from that, Busia Senator Okiya Omtata has called on the Internal Affairs Unit within the National Police Service to conduct proper investigations on killings and abductions by police during the anti-government protests. And as Ian Keitani now tells us, this comes amid claims of presence of at least 51 unidentified bodies at the city mortuary, which could be of those abducted and killed during the demos.
With the men in uniform under constant pressure and scrutiny over their conduct on protesters, most recently during the anti-government demonstrations, pressure continues to mount on the police force. Coming under fire this time round being the Internal Affairs Unit within the National Police Service. Busia Senator Okiya Omtata wants the unit to conduct investigations on the conduct of police during the anti-government demonstrations, insisting that the police contravened the constitution while lamenting over the brutality meted on protesters.
Unfortunately, and most unacceptably, the National Police Service has failed miserably in its hallowed duty of protecting and defending the rights and fundamental freedoms of these members of the public.
According to the first-time senator, at least 64 Kenyans were brutally killed, with 50 of them identified by their kins.
The police violence has killed at least 64 innocent people, of whom 50 have been positively identified, and 14 bullet-riddled bodies of males lying in various mortuaries remain unidentified, and has left hundreds with grave injuries. I demand that the Internal Affairs Unit conducts prompt and thorough investigations into the gross misconduct by the police, which resulted in the deaths and injuries.
However, in a turn of events, activist Hussein Khalid now says there are at least 51 unidentified bodies at the city mortuary, bodies that he claims could be of those who were abducted and killed during the protests.
From 25th of June, we confirmed that there are over 50, actually to be exact 51, unknown bodies that had been brought in. Up to this moment, those bodies are not known as to whom they belong to. And some of them were actually even recorded as shooting cases. We know that in the past, we've had cases recorded as accident, but actually they were shooting cases. I think the case of Shakil is one such example.
With the tens of families unaware of their kin's whereabouts, Khalid alluded to the bodies possibly being those of missing persons, with at least 3 recorded as cases of shootings.
So of the 51 bodies that we are talking about, I can confirm that they are unknown. Not even one of them has been identified. Of course, in the recent past, the last 1 week or so, we had other unknown bodies also, but those ones were identified. So if you actually consider those that have been identified, we can say that there are easily around 60 or so bodies that were brought in here as unknown. But then we had a few that were identified. And those that remain up to now to be unknown are around 51. And this is our humble appeal, for the government, for everyone out there, to help us identify these bodies so that, if they met their death in one way or another related to the protest, then we can know and, find out how best to work with families.
While slamming the use of police in civilian clothes to rain terror on Kenyans, Omtata wants the Internal Affairs Unit to investigate their conduct and make its findings public within the next 21 days.
I have a legitimate expectation that the Internal Affairs Unit will conduct the investigation professionally without unreasonable delay and finalize the exercise within 21 days from the date of this letter.
Ian Keitani, K24 TV.
All right, that is the news this particular morning, and of course a lot will be happening today, and we'll be following on that and just bringing you up to date in our subsequent bulletins, of course, on Mchipuko here on K24, and also later on at 1 p.m. on K24 Newscast. So keep it here, but we do want to have a conversation here, and my guests are already, some of them, they're already in studio here. Hello, Senator Gloria.
Good morning.
It has been a minute.
Yes.
It has been a long minute.
I've taken a hiatus, so I'm back.
You're taking okay, I do understand. So how are you though?
I'm well.
You're doing well?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for making time this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Nudin, you arrived safe here, I can see. I wanted to ask about traffic, but I know you didn't get any.
I'm lucky.
So how is your Tuesday today? Today you're not doing mandamano. People are not talking to the state.
It's going to be a long Tuesday because after here I have to go to City Court and address the court because there are some young men who are arrested.
Oh, some
109.
109?
Yes. So
okay.
as a society, we have work to do.
Good. It's always good to be serving the nation in different capacities. All right, we'll be having a conversation later on when we come, taking a look at the dailies and what exactly some of these newspapers are saying from the political front all the way to economy and social issues. We'll be getting into that with my guests in studio, of course, Senator Gloria Oroba and Nurdin Kagai, who is an advocate of the High Court. That's coming later. And also a conversation about healing the nation. After weeks of protests, how exactly do we go about healing this particular nation and being united once again? When we come back, we'll be having that.